The radio crackled with static as Captain Raven Nighthawk Kestrel banked her F-16 Fighting Falcon through the pre-dawn darkness above the Syrian desert. Intelligence had been wrong before, but never this wrong. The compound that was supposed to house a small terrorist cell now sprawled beneath her like a military fortress, bristling with anti-aircraft installations and crawling with at least 200 hostiles. Her thermal imaging painted a picture that made her blood run cold. This wasn't a raid anymore. It was a potential massacre waiting to happen. Nighthawk, this is Overwatch. Confirm visual on target compound, came the voice of Commander Marcus Ironside Torino through her headset. Even across the encrypted channel, she could hear the skepticism that had haunted her entire career. The same tone that questioned whether a woman who stood 5'4" and weighed barely 120 could handle the psychological pressure of close air support. The same doubt that had followed her through every briefing, every mission planning session, every moment she'd proven herself only to start over again with the next operation. She adjusted her night vision goggles and studied the compound through her targeting pod. What she saw defied everything in their intelligence briefings. The facility stretched across nearly 2 square kilometers, with multiple buildings connected by reinforced walkways. Satellite imagery had shown a small outpost. Reality revealed a fortified stronghold with enough firepower to down a squadron. Below, Navy SEALs led by Ironside were advancing on foot, completely unaware they were walking into a killing field that would make Black Hawk Down look like a training exercise. Overwatch, Nighthawk has eyes on. Intelligence package was severely compromised. Recommend immediate abort and extraction. Her voice remained steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her system. 7 years of flying combat missions had taught her to compartmentalize fear, to speak with authority even when her heart hammered against her ribs like a caged bird. The pause lasted exactly 4 seconds, long enough for her to complete another banking turn and reconfirm what she was seeing. Long enough to know that Ironside was processing information that contradicted everything they'd planned for. Long enough to realize that, in approximately 18 minutes, 12 of the Navy's finest would walk into an ambush that would end their lives unless someone with superior firepower and tactical positioning intervened. Negative, Nighthawk. Mission proceeds as planned. Your job is observation and emergency support only. The dismissal in Ironside's voice cut deeper than he probably intended, but it also steeled her resolve. She'd been here before, moments when protocol demanded she remain silent while her tactical experience screamed warnings that could save lives. She checked her weapons systems one final time, knowing that before this night ended, she would either prove herself beyond any doubt or die trying. The Syrian desert stretched endlessly below as Raven Kestrel prepared to rewrite the rules of engagement. Her F-16's engines whispered through the darkness, carrying death on wings that had been forged in 100 different conflicts. She'd earned her callsign Nighthawk during her 3rd deployment to Afghanistan, when she provided close air support for a Marine unit pinned down in the Hindu Kush. That night, she delivered ordnance with surgical precision through a snowstorm that had grounded every other aircraft in the theater. The Marines had called her their guardian angel. Her squadron had simply called her lucky. But luck had nothing to do with the intelligence she was processing now. Her heads-up display painted a picture of defensive positions that spoke to military-grade planning. These weren't insurgents with improvised weapons. This was a professional fighting force with equipment that belonged in a conventional army. The thermal signatures showed heavy machine gun nests positioned to create overlapping fields of fire. Anti-aircraft missiles were clearly visible in hardened bunkers. Most disturbing of all, she counted at least 15 snipers positioned in elevated positions with clear sight lines to every possible approach route. Ironside, Nighthawk. I'm reading multiple hardened positions with crew-served weapons. These thermals show at least a company-strength force with professional defensive arrangements. Request permission to paint targets for immediate airstrike before your team advances. The silence stretched longer this time. Through her secure radio, she could hear the background chatter of the SEAL team's tactical communications, position reports, equipment checks, the quiet confidence of operators who believed they understood their mission parameters. Commander Torino had built his reputation on meticulous planning and flawless execution. His teams trusted him absolutely, and he'd never lost a man under his command. But his faith in intelligence reports had always been stronger than his faith in pilots who questioned orders. Nighthawk, maintain your position and prepare for observation duties. Ground team is Oscar Mike in 15 minutes. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority, but underneath it, Raven detected something else: uncertainty. He'd seen the same intelligence reports she had, the ones that painted this operation as a low-risk interdiction of a suspected weapons cache. The ones that mentioned a skeleton crew of 8 to 12 hostiles with small arms and possibly one heavy machine gun. She banked left and began a slow orbit that would keep her positioned for maximum tactical flexibility. Her training had taught her to trust the chain of command, but her experience had taught her something more valuable. Sometimes the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure came down to a split-second decision to ignore orders and trust your instincts. The compound below pulsed with activity that intelligence had completely missed. This wasn't a weapons cache. It was a staging area for something much larger, something that would explain the professional-grade fortifications and the sheer number of personnel. As she watched through her targeting systems, she began to understand that they'd stumbled into something that went far beyond their original mission parameters. The desert wind carried her aircraft through another banking turn, as she prepared to make a decision that would define the rest of her career. Commander Marcus Torino crouched behind a rocky outcropping exactly 800 meters from the compound's outer perimeter, studying the target through his night vision scope. 12 years of leading special operations had given him an almost supernatural ability to read tactical situations, but what he was seeing now didn't match anything in their mission briefing. The intelligence package had described a small outpost with minimal security, but his scope revealed defensive positions that suggested professional military training. His team of 12 SEALs had spread into their assault formation, each man a precision instrument honed by years of training and combat experience. They'd conducted similar operations dozens of times: fast infiltration, surgical strikes, rapid extraction. The mission planning had indicated a 40-minute window from insertion to exfiltration, with minimal resistance expected. Now, studying the compound through his thermal imaging, Torino realized they were looking at a scenario that would require at least 3 times their current force strength to assault successfully. Overwatch, this is Ironside. Visual confirmation of target. Defensive positions appear more substantial than anticipated, but were proceeding as planned. He spoke quietly into his throat microphone, maintaining the professional confidence that his men expected from him. But privately, he was beginning to understand why his air support pilot had recommended aborting the mission. Above him, Captain Kestrel's F-16 made another silent pass, her aircraft's stealth profile barely visible against the star-filled sky. Torino had worked with dozens of pilots over his career, and most of them fell into predictable categories: cowboys who wanted to blow things up, technicians who treated combat like a video game, or glory seekers who saw ground troops as supporting characters in their personal war movies. But something about Nighthawk's radio communications suggested a different kind of pilot, one who understood that close air support was about precision and patience, not firepower and flash. Ironside, Nighthawk, I'm reading significant movement in the compound. Recommend delaying advance until we can assess threat level more thoroughly. Her voice carried a calm professionalism that reminded him of his best NCOs, operators who could deliver bad news without losing their composure. He studied the compound again, this time paying attention to details he'd initially dismissed. The guard rotations were too precise, the defensive positions too well coordinated for a ragtag insurgent group. The thermal signatures showed equipment that belonged in a professional military arsenal. Most importantly, the patterns of movement suggested a force that was actively preparing for contact, not one that was caught off guard by an unexpected raid. Copy Nighthawk. Ground team is holding position pending further assessment. The words felt like admitting defeat, but Torino had survived 12 years of special operations by learning when to trust his instincts over his orders. Something about this mission had felt wrong from the beginning, starting with intelligence that was too clean, too convenient, too perfectly packaged for a straightforward assault. His radio operator signaled for attention, indicating an incoming priority transmission from higher headquarters. As Torino listened to the encrypted message, his understanding of the situation shifted dramatically. This wasn't just a weapons interdiction. It was something much more complex, with implications that reached far beyond their original mission parameters. Above them, Nighthawk continued her patient orbit, waiting for orders that would either validate her tactical assessment or force her to watch 12 good men walk into a killing field. The encrypted transmission painted a picture that changed everything. What intelligence had characterized as a simple weapons cache was actually a staging area for a planned assault on a nearby refugee camp housing 3,000 displaced civilians. The compound's defensive preparations weren't designed to protect a criminal enterprise. They were protecting the operational headquarters for a coordinated attack that would begin at dawn. The weapons weren't being stored for sale to the highest bidder. They were being distributed to assault teams that were already moving into position. Torino's tactical computer displayed satellite imagery that was less than 6 hours old, showing convoys departing the compound and moving toward population centers. Each convoy represented a potential massacre, and the compound below represented the command and control center that was coordinating the entire operation. The mission had evolved from interdiction to prevention of mass casualties, with a timeline that was measured in hours rather than days. Nighthawk Ironside. Intelligence update changes our mission parameters significantly. We're no longer looking at a simple interdiction. We're looking at prevention of mass civilian casualties. Time factor is now critical. His voice carried new urgency as he processed the implications of what they were facing. Copy Ironside. Recommend immediate targeting of command and control facilities while your team secures high-value targets for interrogation. I can provide precision strikes on defensive positions to create breach points for your assault. Her response came immediately, without hesitation, and Torino realized that she'd been analyzing the tactical situation from an entirely different perspective than his own. Where he'd been thinking about force protection and mission completion, she'd been thinking about target analysis and battlefield geometry. Her training as a pilot had given her a perspective that his ground-focused experience had missed: the ability to see the entire battlefield as a single tactical problem rather than a series of individual challenges. Nighthawk, what's your assessment of defensive capabilities? Can you identify high-priority targets for initial strikes? He found himself asking for her tactical input in a way that would have been unthinkable at the beginning of the mission. But the situation had evolved beyond conventional special operations parameters, and he needed every available perspective to develop an effective plan. Ironside, I'm reading 12 defensive positions with overlapping fields of fire, multiple anti-aircraft installations, and at least 20 snipers in elevated positions. Recommend coordinated strikes on the eastern defensive line to create a breach corridor, followed by suppression fires on overwatch positions during your advance. Her voice carried the confidence of someone who had studied the battlefield with professional thoroughness. For the first time since receiving his commission, Commander Marcus Torino found himself taking tactical advice from a pilot. Not because protocol demanded it, but because her analysis was better than his own. The realization was humbling and professionally transformative, marking the beginning of a respect that would reshape his understanding of joint operations. Above them, Captain Raven Kestrel prepared to demonstrate why her callsign was Nighthawk, and why 12 years of skeptical colleagues had been fundamentally wrong about her capabilities. The first target appeared in Raven's heads-up display as a perfect geometric solution to a tactical problem. The Eastern Guard Tower held 3 snipers whose positioning allowed them to dominate the most logical approach route for Torino's team. Her targeting computer calculated wind speed, target distance, and ordnance trajectory with mechanical precision, but the decision to engage was entirely human. She was about to cross a line that would either save 12 lives or escalate a covert operation into something that could trigger an international incident. Ironside Nighthawk. I have positive identification on Eastern Overwatch position. 3 snipers with clear sight lines to your planned approach route. Request permission to engage with precision ordnance. Her finger hovered over the weapon's release switch, waiting for authorization that would transform her from observer to active participant. The pause lasted exactly 3 seconds, long enough for Torino to process the implications of what she was proposing. Once she engaged, their mission would shift from covert interdiction to active combat operations. The sound of her ordnance would alert every hostile in the compound, transforming a planned surgical strike into a sustained firefight. But without her intervention, his team would be walking into a crossfire that would leave them pinned down in open ground with no cover and no escape routes. Nighthawk, you are cleared hot. Engage Eastern Overwatch with precision strikes. The words carried the weight of absolute trust, and Raven felt the responsibility settle onto her shoulders like a physical burden. 12 lives depended on her ability to deliver ordnance with surgical accuracy in darkness, under combat conditions, with no margin for error. Her F-16 banked into an attack approach that would give her the optimal angle for a precision strike. The guard tower filled her targeting display, and she could see the thermal signatures of 3 individuals who had no idea they were about to become the first casualties of a battle they'd helped to create. Her training had prepared her for this moment, but no amount of simulation could replicate the psychological weight of taking lives to save lives. Target acquired. Fox 2. Her voice remained professionally calm as she released a single guided missile, watching its trajectory trace across her display like a falling star. The warhead had been selected for minimum collateral damage while ensuring complete target destruction, enough explosive power to eliminate the sniper position without damaging surrounding structures that might contain intelligence assets. The explosion lit up the desert night like a camera flash, and for a moment the entire compound was visible in stark detail. Raven's thermal imaging revealed the chaos that followed, personnel running between buildings, defensive positions suddenly swiveling to face new threat vectors, communications equipment transmitting emergency signals to unknown recipients. She had announced her presence with authority, and now every hostile in the compound knew they were under attack by professional military forces. Ironside, Eastern Overwatch is neutralized. You have a clear approach corridor for approximately 4 minutes before they can reposition defensive assets. Her tactical assessment was delivered with the same calm professionalism she'd maintained throughout the operation, but internally, she was processing the reality that she'd just committed herself to a battle that would test every skill she'd developed over 7 years of combat flying. Below her, Torino's team began their advance, moving with the coordinated precision of operators who trusted each other absolutely and understood their tactical situation completely. The compound erupted into coordinated defensive activity that confirmed Raven's assessment of their professional capabilities. Through her thermal imaging, she watched as defensive teams moved with military precision to establish overlapping fields of fire across multiple approach routes. This wasn't the panicked scrambling of insurgents caught off guard. This was the measured response of soldiers who had trained for exactly this scenario. Ironside Nighthawk. I'm reading multiple defensive positions repositioning to cover your advance. You have heavy machine gun teams moving to secondary positions on your northern flank. Her targeting computer identified threats faster than she could verbally communicate them, painting a picture of defensive capabilities that would challenge even the most experienced special operations team. Commander Torino's voice came back immediately, carrying the focused intensity of a professional under fire. "Copy, Nighthawk. Can you suppress northern positions while we advance on the main objective?" The question carried implicit trust in her ability to provide precision fire support in danger-close proximity to friendly forces, a level of confidence that she'd spent years earning through missions exactly like this one. Affirmative, Ironside. Stand by for danger-close fire mission. She banked her aircraft into a targeting approach that would allow her to engage multiple positions in rapid sequence. The tactical geometry required split-second timing. Too early, and she'd waste ordnance on empty positions. Too late, and Torino's team would be caught in the open under sustained fire from crew-served weapons. Her first target was a heavy machine gun position that commanded the central approach route. The thermal signature showed a three-man crew with what appeared to be a .50 caliber weapon system, enough firepower to pin down or eliminate Torino's entire team if allowed to engage effectively. Her targeting computer calculated the optimal approach angle for a precision strike that would neutralize the position without creating debris that might injure nearby personnel. Ironside, Nighthawk. Engaging northern heavy weapons position. Recommend your team take cover for 30 seconds. Her voice carried the calm authority of someone who had delivered similar warnings dozens of times before, but the stakes had never been higher. One miscalculation could result in friendly fire casualties that would haunt her for the rest of her career. The guided missile streaked through the darkness with mechanical precision, its trajectory calculated to intersect with the machine gun position at the optimal angle for maximum effectiveness. The explosion illuminated the compound for a second time, revealing defensive positions that were already adapting to her attack pattern. These weren't amateur fighters. They were professionals who understood how to fight against air support, and they were implementing countermeasures that suggested extensive training. Northern position neutralized. You have clear advancement for approximately 3 minutes. Her tactical update was delivered while she was already acquiring her next target, a mortar team that was attempting to establish indirect fire support for the compound's defenders. The battle was evolving into a complex engagement that would test every aspect of her training and experience. Below her, Torino's team moved through the breach she'd created, their advance covered by precision fires that eliminated threats with surgical accuracy. Torino's team moved through the darkness with the coordinated precision of operators who had conducted similar missions across 3 different theaters of operation. Each SEAL knew his role in the tactical formation, understood the timing of the advance, and trusted that his teammates would execute their assignments flawlessly. But as they approached the compound's outer perimeter, the reality of their tactical situation became increasingly complex. Overwatch, Blackbird 6. We have visual on multiple defensive positions that weren't in our intelligence package. Recommend priority targeting on eastern and southern approaches. The voice belonged to Chief Petty Officer Daniel Blackbird Rivera, Torino's second-in-command, and a veteran of 47 combat operations. His tactical assessment carried the weight of experience earned through a decade of special operations. Above them, Nighthawk's F-16 made another attack run, her ordnance eliminating a sniper position that would have commanded their advance route. The precision of her strikes was remarkable. Each explosion eliminated specific threats without causing collateral damage that might compromise their mission objectives. Torino had worked with dozens of pilots over his career, but none had demonstrated this level of tactical awareness combined with technical precision. Blackbird 6, Overwatch. Continue advance to primary objective. Nighthawk will provide overwatch and eliminate defensive positions as they present themselves. Torino's voice carried confident authority, But privately, he was processing the reality that their mission success was increasingly dependent on air support that he'd initially viewed as supplementary to their primary operation. The compound's layout was more complex than satellite imagery had suggested. Multiple buildings were connected by covered walkways that would provide concealment for defending forces attempting to reposition between Nighthawk's airstrikes. The main objective, a communications facility that served as the command center for the planned refugee camp assault, was located in the compound center, protected by defensive positions that created overlapping fields of fire. Ironside, Nighthawk. I'm reading substantial movement in the central compound. Recommend coordinated assault on multiple entry points to prevent defensive concentration. Her tactical recommendation reflected an understanding of ground operations that surprised him. Most pilots focused on individual targets. She was thinking about battlefield geometry and tactical timing. Copy, Nighthawk. Blackbird team will establish overwatch positions while Alpha team advances on primary objective. Request suppression fires on southern defensive line during our movement. His response reflected a growing trust in her tactical judgment that would have been unthinkable at the mission's beginning. The evolution of their professional relationship was happening in real time, under combat conditions that tested every aspect of their training and experience. What had begun as a standard special operations mission was becoming a complex joint operation that required perfect coordination between air and ground assets. The stakes were measured in civilian lives that would be lost if they failed to neutralize the threat before dawn. Above them, Captain Raven Kestrel prepared to demonstrate that her tactical understanding was matched by technical skills that would redefine Torino's expectations of close air support. The central compound revealed itself to be a sophisticated command and control facility that explained the professional caliber of the defensive preparations. Through her targeting systems, Raven could see communications arrays, computer equipment, and planning materials that suggested an operation far more complex than a simple assault on a refugee camp. This was a coordination center for multiple simultaneous attacks across the region, with the refugee camp serving as just one target in a broader campaign of terror. Ironside, Nighthawk. Central facility appears to be a major command center with extensive communications capabilities. Recommend your team prioritize intelligence gathering over destruction. Her tactical assessment reflected an understanding that the mission had evolved beyond simple interdiction to intelligence collection that could prevent multiple civilian casualties. Below her, Torino's team had divided into two elements, with Blackbird team establishing overwatch positions while Alpha team prepared to assault the primary objective. The coordination between the two elements demonstrated the kind of tactical proficiency that came from years of training and combat experience, but the complexity of the target would test their capabilities to the maximum. Copy, Nighthawk. Alpha team will focus on intelligence collection while Blackbird team provides security. Request continuous overwatch during our advance. Torino's trust in her tactical judgment had evolved throughout the operation, but now he was asking her to provide the kind of precision fire support that required absolute confidence in her abilities. Her targeting computer identified 3 separate threats that could interdict Alpha team's advance: a machine gun position covering the main entrance, a sniper team with overwatch on the courtyard, and a mortar crew attempting to establish indirect fire support. The tactical challenge was eliminating all 3 threats in rapid sequence, while maintaining situational awareness for additional defensive positions that might emerge during the engagement. Ironside, I have 3 priority targets. Engaging machine gun position first, followed by sniper overwatch, then mortar team. Recommend Alpha team delay advance for 90 seconds while I clear your approach route. Her voice carried the confidence of someone who had calculated the tactical timing with professional precision. The first explosion illuminated the compound's main entrance, revealing architectural details that confirmed the facility's importance. This wasn't a temporary staging area. It was a permanent installation with hardened structures designed to withstand conventional attack. The defensive preparations weren't improvised. They were engineered by professionals who understood modern military capabilities. Machine gun position neutralized. Engaging sniper overwatch. Her second missile eliminated the elevated position that commanded the central courtyard, creating a clear approach route for Alpha Team's advance. The precision of her strikes was creating tactical opportunities that would allow Torino's team to complete their mission despite being outnumbered and outgunned. As her third missile eliminated the mortar position, Raven realized that the battle was entering its most critical phase. The compound's defenders were adapting to her attack pattern, and Torino's team was about to enter close-quarters combat against professional fighters who knew the terrain better than any satellite imagery could reveal. Alpha Team moved through the breach created by Nighthawk's precision strikes, their tactical formation designed for close-quarters combat in unknown terrain. Each SEAL carried specialized equipment for intelligence collection, understanding that their mission had evolved from simple interdiction to preventing a coordinated campaign of terror that could result in thousands of civilian casualties. The compound's interior revealed sophisticated planning capabilities that confirmed the scope of the threat they were facing. Computer terminals displayed operational planning for simultaneous attacks on refugee camps, schools, and medical facilities across the region. Communications equipment maintained contact with assault teams that were already moving toward their targets. Most significantly, tactical maps showed coordination with state-sponsored terrorist organizations that possessed capabilities far beyond anything intelligence had anticipated. Overwatch Alpha 6. We have confirmation of multi-target operation with significant civilian casualties planned for dawn. Recommend immediate notification of Theater Command for coordinated response. The voice belonged to Lieutenant Commander Sarah Alpha Martinez, Torino's lead intelligence specialist and a veteran of electronic warfare operations. Above them, Nighthawk maintained continuous overwatch, her thermal imaging providing early warning of defensive repositioning, while her weapon systems remained ready to eliminate threats as they emerged. The evolution of the tactical situation had transformed her role from occasional fire support to continuous battlefield management, requiring split-second decisions that balanced mission objectives with force protection. Alpha 6, Overwatch, Copy Intelligence Assessment. Continue collection while Blackbird team maintains security perimeter. Torino's response reflected the reality that their mission timeline was now measured in minutes rather than hours. Dawn was less than 3 hours away, and the assault teams were already in position to begin their attacks on civilian targets. The compound's defenders were regrouping for a coordinated counterattack that would attempt to overwhelm Alpha Team's position, while they were focused on intelligence collection. Through her targeting systems, Raven could see defensive elements moving through covered approaches that would allow them to mask their firepower at critical points. The tactical geometry was becoming increasingly complex, with multiple threats developing simultaneously. Ironside Nighthawk. I'm reading substantial movement toward Alpha Team's position. Recommend immediate extraction of intelligence assets while I provide covering fires. Her assessment reflected an understanding that the mission had accomplished its primary objectives, but staying longer would risk casualties that could compromise the broader operation. Negative, Nighthawk. Alpha Team requires additional time for complete intelligence collection. Request maximum suppression of defensive positions during extended operations. Torino's response reflected a professional judgment that the intelligence they were collecting was worth the increased risk to his personnel. The battle was entering its most dangerous phase, with Alpha Team exposed in the compound center, while defensive forces massed for a coordinated assault. Above them, Captain Raven Kestrel prepared to demonstrate why her callsign was Nighthawk, and why the skills she developed over 7 years of combat operations made her the most dangerous pilot in the theater. The defensive counterattack began with professional coordination that confirmed these weren't insurgent fighters but trained military personnel. Through her thermal imaging, Raven watched as 3 separate assault teams moved toward Alpha Team's position using covered approaches that would allow them to mass their firepower at the compound's center. The tactical sophistication of their movement suggested special operations training, possibly from state-sponsored military advisors. Ironside Nighthawk. 3 assault teams converging on Alpha position from multiple vectors. I can engage one team effectively, but the other 2 will reach effective range within 60 seconds. Her tactical assessment was delivered while she was already maneuvering for an attack run, but the geometry of the situation was becoming increasingly complex. The compound's layout was working against them. Multiple buildings and covered walkways provided concealment for the defending forces, while limiting her ability to engage multiple targets simultaneously. Each attack run required her to reposition her aircraft, creating gaps in her overwatch capability that the defenders were exploiting with professional skill. Copy Nighthawk. Engage the Northern Assault Team while Alpha Team repositions for defensive operations. Torino's voice carried the focused intensity of a commander managing a complex tactical situation, but underneath it, Raven detected the stress of someone who was beginning to understand that their mission might require more resources than they currently possessed. Her first missile eliminated the Northern Assault Team's heavy weapons position, but the explosion also revealed the scope of the defensive preparations. The compound contained far more personnel than intelligence had indicated, at least 60 professional fighters with equipment that belonged in a conventional military arsenal. Her thermal imaging showed additional assault teams forming up in buildings that hadn't appeared on satellite imagery. Ironside, intelligence package was severely compromised. I'm reading at least company-strength defensive forces with professional military equipment. Recommend immediate extraction while I provide covering fires. Her assessment reflected a professional judgment that the tactical situation was developing beyond their capabilities to manage with current force strength. Below her, Alpha Team had barricaded themselves in the communications facility, using captured equipment to transmit intelligence about the planned attacks, while Blackbird Team maintained a defensive perimeter that was becoming increasingly tenuous. The tactical timing was critical. They needed additional minutes to complete their intelligence collection, but staying longer would risk being overwhelmed by superior numbers. Negative Nighthawk. Mission is too critical for early extraction. Request maximum suppression while Alpha completes collection. Torino's response reflected the reality that failure to collect complete intelligence would result in civilian casualties that could number in the thousands. The battle was entering its climactic phase, with 12 SEALs and 1 pilot holding defensive positions against professional military forces that possessed overwhelming numerical superiority. Above them, Captain Raven Kestrel prepared to demonstrate that superior training and tactical skill could overcome numerical disadvantages, but only if she could maintain the precision and timing that had characterized her performance throughout the operation. The tactical situation was developing into something that would test every aspect of her professional capabilities and redefine her understanding of what it meant to provide close air support under impossible conditions. The compound's defenders launched their coordinated assault with timing and precision that confirmed Raven's assessment of their professional capabilities. 3 separate assault teams advanced simultaneously, using suppressive fire and movement techniques that would challenge even the most experienced special operations forces. Through her targeting systems, she could see the tactical coordination that marked these fighters as military professionals rather than insurgent amateurs. Ironside Nighthawk. Coordinated assault developing from 3 vectors. I can suppress one team per attack run, but they're using professional movement techniques that limit my effectiveness. Her voice remained calm despite the tactical pressure, but privately she was calculating ordnance remaining and fuel status while processing the geometry of a battlefield that was becoming increasingly complex. Alpha Team's position in the communications facility provided some defensive advantages, but they were essentially trapped in a building surrounded by superior forces. Blackbird Team's overwatch positions were being systematically suppressed by accurate fire from weapons that belonged in a conventional military arsenal. The tactical balance was shifting against them with each passing minute. Copy, Nighthawk. Alpha Team has critical intelligence that prevents multiple civilian casualties. Request maximum suppression to buy additional time for data collection. Torino's response carried the weight of a commander who understood that mission failure would result in thousands of deaths, but mission continuation might result in the loss of his entire team. Raven banked her F-16 into an attack approach that would allow her to engage the Eastern Assault Team, but her fuel status was becoming a critical factor in tactical planning. She had ordnance remaining for perhaps 6 more precision strikes, but her aircraft would need to return to base within 30 minutes regardless of the ground situation. The timing was creating tactical pressure that required split-second decisions with life-or-death consequences. Ironside, I have fuel for approximately 25 more minutes of station time. After that, you'll be without air support until relief aircraft can reach your position. The tactical reality was stark. They had a narrow window to complete their mission and extract before being overwhelmed by superior numbers. Her missile eliminated the Eastern Assault Team's leadership element, but the explosion revealed additional defensive positions that hadn't appeared on her thermal imaging. The compound was larger and more complex than satellite imagery had indicated, with underground facilities that housed personnel and equipment beyond their ability to assess from altitude. They were fighting a battle against an enemy whose true strength remained unknown. Understood, Nighthawk. Alpha Team estimates 15 more minutes for complete intelligence collection. Request you maintain suppression as long as possible, then return to base. Torino's response reflected professional acceptance of tactical limitations, but also absolute determination to complete a mission that would save civilian lives. Below her, 12 of the Navy's finest were fighting a battle against overwhelming odds, trusting that her precision fires would provide the narrow tactical advantage they needed to complete their mission and survive. Above them, Captain Raven Kestrel prepared to demonstrate that sometimes the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure came down to a pilot's willingness to risk everything for the lives of people she'd never met. Alpha Team's intelligence collection was revealing the scope of a terrorist campaign that would fundamentally alter the regional security situation. The captured communications equipment showed coordination between multiple terrorist organizations, state-sponsored military advisors, and criminal networks that possessed capabilities rivaling conventional military forces. The planned attacks weren't isolated incidents. They were part of a coordinated campaign designed to destabilize the entire region through systematic targeting of civilian populations. Overwatch Alpha 6. Intelligence indicates coordinated attacks on 14 separate civilian targets beginning at dawn. We have locations, timing, and tactical plans for all operations. This intelligence package could prevent thousands of civilian casualties. Lieutenant Commander Martinez's voice carried professional excitement tempered by awareness of their deteriorating tactical situation. The compound's defenders were demonstrating tactical patience that suggested extensive training in asymmetric warfare. Rather than launching hasty assaults, they were systematically reducing Blackbird Team's defensive positions while positioning assault teams for a coordinated final attack. The professional quality of their tactics was forcing Raven to expend ordnance at an unsustainable rate while they conserved their resources for decisive action. Alpha 6, Overwatch. Continue collection. Nighthawk is providing maximum suppression. Torino's response reflected absolute commitment to mission completion despite tactical circumstances that were becoming increasingly desperate. Below them, Blackbird team was maintaining defensive positions that were being systematically reduced by accurate fire from professional military weapons. Raven's next attack run eliminated a mortar position that was attempting to provide indirect fire support for the assault teams, but her ordnance count was dropping toward critical levels. Each missile she expended reduced her ability to provide covering fires for the extraction, but allowing the defensive positions to remain active would make extraction impossible regardless of her remaining capabilities. Ironside Nighthawk. I have ordnance for 3 more precision strikes, then I'll be limited to cannon fire for close support. Recommend Alpha Team prepare for immediate extraction upon completion of intelligence collection. Her tactical assessment was delivered while she maneuvered for another attack approach, but the fuel gauge and ordnance counter were creating timing pressures that demanded immediate tactical decisions. The battle was approaching its climax, with mission success depending on perfect timing between intelligence collection, fire support, and extraction procedures. Any miscalculation would result in either incomplete intelligence that would fail to prevent civilian casualties, or tactical situations that would result in friendly casualties among some of the military's most valuable personnel. Copy Nighthawk. Alpha Team estimates 5 more minutes for complete collection. Stand by for immediate extraction support upon completion. Torino's response reflected tactical understanding that their window for successful mission completion was measured in minutes, with no margin for error or equipment failure. Above them, Captain Raven Kestrel calculated fuel consumption and ordnance expenditure, while preparing to provide the precision fire support that would allow 12 SEALs to complete a mission that would save thousands of civilian lives and redefine her understanding of what it meant to be a guardian angel for ground forces who trusted her absolutely. The compound's defenders launched their final assault with coordination that demonstrated military-grade tactical training. Through her,